We're talking, though, this morning about Melinda Gates, who's now getting some major criticism by Catholic bloggers about this new birth control program that she's been promoting. The Gates Foundation is going to provide contraception to 120 million women in developing countries. Bloggers claim that not only violates the sanctity of sex, but could also result in population control, which I think was part of the idea behind it. Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta spoke with Gates in an interview ahead of the International Family Planning Summit, which the Gates Foundation is hosting in London next week. Here's what he asked her and what she said.
You're completely comfortable being a practicing Catholic and advocating for this and obviously encouraging and even funding it.
To hear a poor woman say to me, I can't find the means to feed this child, and if I have 7 children, there's no way I can feed and keep alive 7 children. I think somebody needs to give voice to that, and I think it's important that I do that.
It's an interesting dilemma she's in, I think, as a practicing Catholic, which is very strict on the birth control issue, and as a woman who's saying, you know, my mission is to make practical, actual change for women who need it. In countries that have such major poverty issues that they just cannot have more children, you know.
It seems so logical that you should, we're not talking abortion now, it seems so logical that you should be able to use contraception, but I know that you as a Republican can't just say it, and I don't know how you really feel, but it seems logical. You're a doctor. There's a problem. There are too many people. There's cultural problems. There's women being forced into all sorts of sexual situations. There's AIDS, and that the Catholic, some group of Catholics, which I was raised as a Catholic, says it drives me crazy because it defies logic.
Republicans can absolutely address this. Obviously, if you're speaking about HIV and you have a couple that's married, you obviously want the man to use a condom to protect himself or his partner. Believe me, that's a thing. I think what is kind of the false thought is that the birth control pill will be a cure for poverty. I say that because Japan and China have a demographic time bomb where they've been so strict on their population control that the average age of their population is increasing rapidly, and they are not reproducing or replacing their people.
Is it a false analogy to compare an economy like Japan, an economy like China, and compare that to developing nations that really have a massive gap in that issue? Right, their issue is not that the population is getting old and not enough children. Their issue is they're dying from lack of food.
Is China a developing economy or a developed economy? Because China,
I put it more in the developed economy.
People are saying by 2050, China will no longer be able to support itself because their population will look like that, with many old and few young.
But that's not because someone
by the way, I'm not arguing against what Melinda Gates is doing. I'm just saying that we have to point out that in 20 years, Vietnam will have more people than Russia. Russia's future is limited by their inability to replace their population. If I was in Russia, you should have pro-natalist policies. Vietnam's strength will be their labor market.
Look, you know, when you have folks who are born into poverty and then you have children, then you have a much more difficult time to get out of poverty. You look at in this country right now, the exact same thing. And so if a woman is having the opportunity to choose birth control, and she says, look, I may not want to get pregnant at an earlier age, at a later age, that's fine. I have no issue with that. You know, and so when people start complaining about, look, I totally get the whole Catholic deal, but let's just be honest, it's a whole lot of Catholics doing stuff outside the pews, different from what they're hearing where they're sitting in the pews in church.
This is the reality. 98% of sexually active Catholic women use birth control. 98%. That's a stat, and so are they all going to be excommunicated? Is the question.
That's a whole
It is about choice, right? For women, I mean, should have choice.
Choice not to have 7 children.
Not to have 7 children.
A woman doesn't have the choice that you have in the United States and developing countries.
I salute Melinda Gates. I think what she's doing is an amazing thing, and maybe help some of those countries that are mired in terrible poverty. Still ahead this morning on Starting.